So I wanted to do this this little vlog today because I had this like really incredible insight, and I think it's going to help anyone who has had the Aya and is in process of integration, and I think specifically around sexual abuse. So this is how brilliantly clever and how the universe works if you're open to really help you continue to heal and to basically return and kind of reconnect to your soul, because the thing that's holding your soul captive or has kidnapped it is a very powerful energy, so she's always cleaning it in some way, right? So here we go. It's absolutely incredible. So at Thanksgiving, I get a text from an old boyfriend who I'd been with for 5 years. It'd been 2 years since I'd been with him, and I got really angry at the end, and it was just like, I'm just not doing this anymore. It was 5 years of, you know, whatever. I don't want to get into the relationship. It was basically, you know, it just wasn't working. There wasn't a lot of energy. It wasn't going anywhere. And so, but this is a kind of quite a cold human being, and I'd struggled a lot to sort of, you know, try to make it work and kind of normalize a difficult situation. So fast forward 2 years after I'd broken up, and I'm coming out of a restaurant for Thanksgiving with my son, and I get a text and it says, "Happy Thanksgiving, Maria." And let's just call him Frank for the sake of the name. And immediately there's something, I go, okay, I'm like, really? But oh shit, but I'm kind of going to answer it, whatever. So I say Happy Thanksgiving. He said, well, we should get together. So I met him for coffee the first time, and there was this feeling of like, it was like a meeting. It wasn't like two people who are, you know, romantic together. It was like, okay, I still had a lot of anger about what he'd done to me and stuff. So I was like, I met with him, and I'm like, why are you here? What are we doing here? And then I wrote him a text saying basically, look, you know, this didn't work, that doesn't work, you know, unless you're willing to really be a loving human being in this relationship, I think we should just call it quits. You know, let's not even bother. So the first meeting was kind of like, okay, it's just a meeting. I wasn't really feeling anything. I wasn't just like, you know, it was just like, who is this kind of, I know him, but it's kind of feel like more like a stranger. It was like a business meeting. So the second time I met him for coffee, so then he calls me and he says, why don't we meet for coffee again? All right. So I meet for coffee, and now he's kind of like, his armor is off, and I feel pity for him. I kind of feel his eyes are kind of glazed, and there's something about like, he needs to be helped, I need to help him, and there's a sense of pity, or kind of like, I need to do something to fix this situation. I need to do something to fix him. Already my code was being triggered, because that's what I grew up with, right? So the third time we met, there was a kind of an excitement, like, oh, you know, perhaps this is going to work. Perhaps we could, this is different now. Watch out for codes, and watch out for your conditioning, because in comes my conditioning. And when he showed up, he was cold, sort of self-centered, and so I have no armor now because of the ayahuasca that's been cleaning and cleansing and cleansing. And so whatever shows up is just raw, and it was a hit to my energetic circuit when I saw him after that. I was kind of taken, it was like being punched in the stomach. I was disoriented. I was supposed to go to LA the next day, and I was just like, you know, usually I'm on automatic and get things done, but I was literally like, you know, and just energetically, there's just like massive like disruption to my system, and I just felt like, oh my God, there's this huge wall of grief, and it's going to come tumbling over me, and I'm going to collapse under this tidal wave of grief that I have. So I felt just awful. Just this kind of physically, energetically, just something was just awfully wrong. And I just, sadness, and I went to LA, and of course I had I was with my beautiful son who's so loving and caring and etc. And so I was able to weather that, and I couldn't fully understand why it was so fucking bad. Why I didn't care for 2 years. It was all good. I mean, it was like, if he didn't ever show up again in my life, that would be fine. But the great mother, because she is a great mother, sent him, and she sent him for a reason. And what was amazing is, the day I got back from LA, I woke up, and the first thought in my head was, my father pimped me out. He took me to other men to be sexually abused. And then I had a ceremony in which I saw awful things, references to that kind of abuse. And I recognize now, and I was able to see firsthand, that it was that scumbag who was such a selfish bastard that he would take his children. I mean, it's just awful. But what was so interesting is that this layer that was there would not have come up. She purposely sent this guy back to me because she knew there was another layer that I couldn't get to, that needed to be exploded and inched out and kind of like dynamited out and pushed out. And the only way was to bring me back to that code. So here's the code. And also, so I had a dream at Niue, which is a very powerful dream, where my father had tried to get work and he hadn't gotten work. We had to have pity for him. And then we both went up to take care of him, and his sheet fell off and his dick fell out. So that is a monumental kind of signature metaphor for, he asked you to take pity upon him so he could normalize his perversion. And what that means is that I didn't exist. How I felt, who I was, he derided everything. He laughed at my feelings. He made me, I just disappeared. There was no light anywhere. It was just, I just disappeared. I only showed up. And my person was only allowed to show up when he needed something, when he had to be taken care of. And that's all that motherfucker gave a shit about. So I only showed up when he needed to be helped, but he did not give a flying rat's ass about any of us. Whatever that code is, or that child that was still hanging on, got a full blast, real-time wake-up call. Because on that second date with that guy, he ignited the piece of me that was like, oh, poor thing, I have to fix him. He is so much more important than whether he cares or loves or notices or gives a flying fuck. But that ignition was the ignition of the trauma that I was still holding onto, that was still here. And when that got ignited, it started to create the same code of like, oh, perhaps he's different, perhaps this will be different, perhaps there's loving. Because the little girl didn't have any connection in the world at all, other than when this bastard, and through fear, because it was always through anger, did what he wanted her to do. And in that third coffee date, when he sat there, and there was no, I didn't feel pity or anything, he was just this very cold human being, I realized I left that coffee thing so energetically frazzled, like I was raw now. So as a child, oh, I'm gonna show up when he wants, he wants me now, I can exist, I can come out, a little piece of me can come out and connect to the universe because he needs me. That means that I exist in the world. That's the only time I exist. And so, and all those feelings of being rejected and abandoned and denied had all been like stuffed in the back, and like all those feelings, I could not allow those feelings. Well, that third date, I allowed those feelings, and it was fucking awful. I could actually feel what it was like to be rejected and unloved by someone that's supposed to love you. It was brilliant. And it took that energetic kind of like dissonance and that energetic, like, it was just like an earthquake, because I'd never allowed myself to feel as a child what it was like to be abandoned and denied, to have all my feelings just uncared for, all my feelings just like refused. And I didn't refuse them. I couldn't, because I have no armor. There's nowhere to hide. My whole space is just like a massive empty fucking mansion. There's just like all these rooms there and there's nowhere to go. And it literally created this energy. And I think that energetic volcanic response then allowed for something else to come up. And that response was I could actually clarify that it was him that took me to be abused. And that anger that came up, again, shifted something else. So I say this because we don't know how things are happening, but I think when you're connected to the great Aya, and we do ceremony every day, and we're in that place of return and our children, it's so powerful because it's happening energetically all the time. And she's still working, although on this plane, with the appearance of this guy all of a sudden, to propel another spurt of growth and another return to the truth. So now I see clearly, I never showed up. My feelings were buried. I was buried as a human being. The only way I ever showed up is if somebody needed something and I had to feel bad for them, and it was my responsibility to fix them. And then if I fixed them, I existed. And that's the only time my fucking world happened. That's the only time I existed. Other than that, all my powers been shut down because my feelings were shut down. And I wasn't allowed to feel any of me or to live any of me. Just that little girl that woke up when he wanted something. That's the only place I could show up in the world, in the real world. The rest, in fact, I remember, and this is just awful to say, but true. I was at a big company. I ran it as whatever, and they did an unexpected going away party for me, and I felt really bad. I was crying before the event because nobody was supposed to do anything for me, and there was something wrong with me if they were doing it for me and not for them. That's how fucking repressed and awful these motherfuckers were. So I say all of this because I think it's genius that when we connect to the Great Mother, and she is in every moment helping us to return, to be healthy, to be whole, and to be the true, and return to the truest version of ourselves before we were kidnapped, or abused, or coded, or conditioned. And it's phenomenal.